Now, back in the early days of NPA and the NPA process, I used it to completely shift my relationship to food and exercise. And I've talked about that a lot, and I'm going to share that with you today. But I was asked to talk more about it, specifically when it comes to weight issues. So if you're someone who's ever had that kind of diet failure experience, whether you have a yo-yo experience with weight or any kind of issue that you would describe as a weight issue, then this is going to be a great episode for you. And also, if the issues are around something which isn't directly food related, the principles that I'm going to share in this week's episode are full of gems and wisdom. Sound good? Well, let's get into it. Hit it, Kim.
Welcome to the Be a Brilliant Human podcast. You're in the right place if you're a growth-seeking being who acknowledges the challenges and delights of your humanity on the path to an ever more conscious life. If you want to feel inspired to love and accept yourself, to feel free to be and express you in all your brilliance, if you want to truly value yourself and others and feel energized and alive both at home and in the world, then sit back and take a breath as you explore and grow the brilliance of your beautiful human self with your host, the father of non-personal awareness and creator of the NPA process, Joel Young.
Hello, and welcome to the Be a Brilliant Human podcast with me, Joel Young. We are up to episode 57, and welcome. I'm so glad you're here. If you're here for the first time, I'm so glad that you found me and that you're choosing to spend some time with me in your ears in some form or another. And if you're back again for more, I love that you come and choose this on a weekly basis. Welcome to you too. So, I last week talked about cravings and how to let go of your cravings in response in part to a message that I got from somebody who got in touch and said that she'd found NPA and found the Be a Brilliant Human podcast, and that she'd heard me talk about how I'd sort of shifted my energy around food. And could I say more about that, because she'd experienced kind of that yo-yo of weight and weight issues and sort of issues in that area, and she wondered if she could use NPA to help her. So in a sense today I'm answering that question, and I thought, well, what's the best way to do that? And actually a little while ago I was in a conversation which I record. I have an NPA community, and within the community there was a conversation because one of the community members asked about the topic. Generally, she was talking about intuitive eating and her own struggles with weight and with food. And in that conversation, I really sort of spelled out the sort of some of the key information, key pieces that will sort of are really part of my experience of completely shifting my weight and my relationship again to food and exercise. So, first of all, let's talk about that. What happened with me? Well, again, it was early days of NPA, and fundamentally at the time, I'm laughing, at the time I was someone whose sort of idea of, healthy eating was more based on I'm supposed to because I teach personal growth, right? And I had a long history of having a passionate love affair with chocolate, and the exercise piece was something that I just didn't do at all. And I wanted to experiment with what was possible with NPA. So I developed what I call now one of the NPA programs. There's two types of program, and I spell them out in detail in the advanced training, which, by the way, will be coming out soon. If you listen to this at the time of recording, we're in kind of the early days of October 2020. If you listen to this later, it may well be that the advanced training is now out. Very much today, really, I'm going to be encouraging you to try NPA or use NPA as a powerful tool if this is an area where you have struggles. But I worked with these programs, which again I lay out in the advanced training. And what happened was truly amazing, because it wasn't a matter of sort of shifting my weight. Oh, by the way, I should let you know the results, really, shouldn't I? What happened? Well, at the time I was 16.5 stone. I lost 4.5 stone, which is 63 pounds for those of you who work in pounds. God knows what the kilograms are. A lot of kilograms. I often say I lost 4 clothes sizes. And the thing about it was, and the amazing thing with NPA is I didn't do some kind of strict diet. I didn't look up the formula for, what are the foods I should eat? What are the things I shouldn't eat? Is there some kind of, keto or, or calorie counting diet in order to do that? I simply used NPA and the shifts happened all by themselves. And for me, the same thing happened with exercise. Again, for me, the state I was in before for many years was, my idea of extreme sport was lifting the remote control or meditation. Physicality in terms of exercise was not part of what I did. But I worked with NPA and these things just sort of happened by themselves, which got me talking about intuitive eating, because it's really got me into a space where I'm very much led by my intuition and the energy around it when it comes to, what I eat, what I put in my body, what, when I exercise, when I don't exercise, all of these kind of things become very natural. And when you look into, when you use prescriptive diets, if they really click for you, then yeah, they can work and they work great. And certainly people that share these things, for them, it will have been a way which probably came very naturally to them. So it's kind of in alignment. But that isn't true for all of us, and not all formulas work for all people. Whereas I found if you open into that intuitive space, which is one of the things that NPA will certainly help you do, then the right mechanisms, the right way will find you. So I'm going to share this audio with you so you can hear it. It's an open conversation with Suzanne. Suzanne's from Sweden. She's an NPA community member. Couple of things though before we get into it is to just say to you that I use a couple of terms which if you're new to this podcast and new to NPA, then you might go, what the heck's he talking about? So for those people, if you haven't heard about it before, NPA stands for non-personal awareness. It's a simple 6-line spoken word process that fundamentally allows you to not take things so personally. It's a bit like, going from being a sticky frying pan where all the egg and the food you cook in it gets stuck to the surface, to having a Teflon coated one where, whatever gets thrown at you can just slide off effortlessly. And it does a whole lot more than that. Now, one of the terms that I use within NPA is what I call a spew. So the first part of the process really is what I call a spew. What that means is it's an unedited expression. So you may be writing that down, or if you're working with somebody who's maybe a practitioner or someone who's using NPA with you together, they'll just get you to talk about what's going on without really thinking about it, without analysis, that kind of thing. So when I mention spew, that's what I'm talking about. And also, I think the other thing to talk about in that context is that if you do get into NPA, then the first step is to download the process, which you can get for free. You just need to go to joelyoungnpa.com, or you can go to today's show notes, or any of the show notes really, to get this one. But BABrillianthuman.com/57 for the show notes for today. And then if you sign up for that, then I'll be inviting you to get hold of the first step in the training program, which really gives you the confidence to use it. I find people, they'll often download a sheet, but not necessarily use it. Have you ever done that? I have. You want to download, you see something online, you sign up for free, and then you kind of don't really use it. Maybe you read it through once. So the initial offer that I make to you when you do that is the core training, which is NPA basic training. And that will give you the sort of foundation and the encouragement to really start using it so you can get the most of it. And once you've done the basic training or some other, there are a few other trainings you could have done maybe in the past with me, then you'll be eligible to have the advanced training, which will go into the programs and a lot more besides. I'll be talking about much more as we get into the launch phase. So I think I'm just going to check my notes here. Have I covered everything I need to cover about that? I think I have. Let's get into this audio. I hope you enjoy it. By the way, before we dive into that, make sure you subscribe. Hit that subscribe button wherever you are. Otherwise, let's get into this conversation with me and Suzanne. And I'll check back in with you straight afterwards.
So talking about food, when you talked about how you listen to your body and you eat when you're hungry, and when you're not hungry, you don't eat, and so on. I've been playing along with my body for a year, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to be on diet. I used to control my eating. I used to count calories. I used to exercise a lot. I used to do all of the traditional ways of not gaining weight and building some form of muscles and to lose weight. And I found out if you deprive your body into some things, what you actually do is that you trigger an impulse for it all the time. So I decided to go along and eat what my body and my cravings were. So I've been doing that for a year or so, and I also stopped exercising as my body was very tired and I had a lot of ache in my body and so on. So I just stopped exercising, and I just went along eating with as much as I wanted and what I wanted, and I did not pay attention to my body weight. And I think on some level, I think it's balancing out. I came across that I got to be addicted to fat. And I think my body has a reason for why it has developed addiction for fat. But I can see in the way I'm eating that my desires for things shifts. And as long as I'm not sort of force myself not to, I indulge in toast bread with butter and jam and things like that. And one day I don't feel like eating it at all. What I do recognize is I have an addiction for fat. I do eat too much. And I'm gaining weight, which is not healthy. So I would like to find a balance. And so that's my question for assistance here.
So let me offer you some reflections on it, and certainly from my own experience. There's quite a few things in there really that are good, I guess good teaching or good for awareness. Firstly, I love that you've given yourself the time to just unconsciously allow yourself to experience unedited eating. So it's a bit like a spew. One of the things that people often don't understand about the spew is in the encouragement to be unself-conscious in what comes out of your mouth, there's an opportunity for self-witnessing, because when you're editing yourself, or when you're sort of being self-conscious or judgmental about what you're saying, you're not really allowing the true expression as you are in all of your wonderful mess to be seen by yourself. The process often is that as you allow it, you begin to notice where there's well, you mentioned the addiction thing, where there's things that are off, and I think that's a really powerful act of awareness. So I just want to say I love that you've done that, and from that it seems that you have had awarenesses. One of the great gifts of doing it like that, or again like spewing your eating habits, if you like, is that on some level you're dropping the judgment. And one of the things that I've come to learn more than anything else, it's not about what you eat or drink or imbibe in any way. It's the energy you do it with. So you can eat butter and toast, and if you're eating it with joy, and you come from it from an energetic level, then what you're eating is joy. And if you're eating it with guilt, then what you're eating is guilt. Or if you're eating it with judgment, then what you're eating is judgment. So there's a certain amount of sort of chemical reality in the body, but actually the energy that you carry with it has the ability to open your body to processing foods in ways that I think we barely understand the capacity of the body to process things. So that's why there are some people in the world that can, smoke until they're 110 with no impact, or they can eat all sorts of, in quotes, unhealthy food and not put on weight or whatever. And those that will do the best diets in the world die young.
Yeah.
and never be able to, in quotes, control their weight, because I think it's a bit like the NLP thing where, your words are, I don't know what it is, 8% of the communication. The tone is, I don't know, 20%. There's the numbers that are not going to add up, and the body language is the rest. That got me out of the maths, didn't it? So I think in the same way when it comes to food and exercise too, but food for sure, the sponsoring energy really is a much bigger factor than we realise. So then when we come to your share, the thing that struck me in there towards the end was eat too much. So that was the first sign of a judgment coming in, because again, at some point somewhere in there, because on one hand there's you can go, I recognise I'm addicted to fat. And from a neutral place, you go, oh, look, there's an addiction, and then look at it in a neutral way. But when that slips into eat too much, then you're going into that, and I judge myself for it land. Yeah. And then you go from the energy of allowing the flow of self-correction to the energy of back to a form of control, which you've already discovered doesn't work for you. Does that make sense?
So, sort of hitting the brakes and going with the gas. It's what do you call that?
Well, you get nowhere, and you.
Yeah.
You just spin your wheels and create a lot of smoke and run your tires down really quickly.
Yes.
I think it's a double bind is what you're looking for there.
Yeah.
The term is a double bind. In terms of how you sort of work with that, again, it's once you notice the judgment, is to then drop the judgment of the judgment.
Yeah.
So again, you come back into noticing, oh, look, I notice there's an addiction, and on the back of that, I notice there's a judgment of the addiction. So how can I not judge myself for that, and just, again, come back into witnessing and noticing and allowing, and then with that inquiry, and with the vision of I'd like to have balance, it's like just that sort of energetic communication, it'd be nice to have balance, and then listen for what the different responses are. Does that make sense?
Yep.
I mean, it's quite a subtle energetic awareness, but the fact that you've practiced listening for a year means you've not have exercised, but you've built your muscles of awareness up.
Yeah.
So you can be sensitive to the nuances of the body's signals, and from your conscious self,
Yes.
I say from your conscious self now, you can offer that request to the body, or the invitation to co-create something new. So, look, there's a trained-in addiction. So that means the body is craving because it's got used to an imbalance. That's what that is. It's like, I see you, and it's okay. And how about we work together to create something that works better for all of us? That means all of us being me, the mind, and me, the body.
I can do that. Absolutely. It's interesting because I've started to drink kombucha and a lot of kefir. I make my own kombucha, my own kefir. and drinking those probiotics takes away the longing, the you can have a gut longing for something that you really, really crave for right now, but the probiotics takes that away, which leaves me into a situation where I can walk around and I can think, what do I want to eat? I feel that I want to eat. I don't know what to eat because I don't have any taste in my mouth for anything. So I ask myself, do you want a hamburger? No. Do you want fries? No. Do you want yogurt? Might want that. Don't know. Do you want bread? No. So that's an interesting point of view as well, because it becomes very boring to eat. But I want to eat.
Yeah.
So
I totally understand that. I've had the same. Again, if you look at it from a classic transformational path. So in a transformational path, you've had a habit or a pattern, if you like, and then you begin to shift the pattern and you go into that sort of chaos phase, the unknown zone, as they say in the journey, or there's different ways of expressing that. But as you've noticed the eating habit and the body in its own way has gone, this is how we do it, this is what we get, and we want this because of these imbalances or these requirements. And then you sort of start to, on some level, let that go. Then you have that phase of not knowing, which can be a bit confusing on one level. But it's progress, and it's a sense of, because my habits have shifted, but I'm not yet established new ones that work better. There's that sense of, I don't know what I like. And when I look at everything, because I'm in that chaos phase, nothing seems right, because nothing is right now, because there's nothing. There's just that we're in that blank canvas.
That makes absolutely sense, because I recognize that from my spiritual work and my growth in spirit, but I would never apply that into the eating habits. Interesting, Joel. Thank you.
You're welcome. And in the meantime, if you want to eat something, then as long as there's no right and no wrong, just something will come to you. And again, in that unknown space, normally that it's because the mind is used to deciding. But it's again in the handing over. It may be that I just have this in the cupboard, or that would be easy for me to make tonight, and I'm actually feeling tired or lazy or whatever the hell it is, doesn't matter. So I'll just do that, and it's okay. And in, again, that continued unedited place, through that sort of exploration in co-creation with the universe of what is, including other factors, then the new evolution, the new preferences will begin to emerge, and sometimes in surprising ways.
It's interesting, which means that I go shopping and I have these chocolate chip cookies that I can buy, and I can indulge in that, really. And I can enjoy it, really. And I can leave them in the cupboard for weeks. My body doesn't want it. And then suddenly I feel like having one, and I have one. And I feel like, whoa, I don't want it anymore. One is enough. I take another one. In case of I want some more. But I don't want them anymore. That's so strange.
When I talk about my physical transformation, the whole buff body program thing, that was a huge difference, because I was, before, I was the person that if I had chocolate in the house, it would all be gone in one go. I couldn't open a bar of chocolate and without finishing, or even a box of chocolates or whatever was in the house. Basically, it was there, it was gone. Because I didn't, because again, I had that kind of habitual behavior dressed up as liking and desire. And then again, like it was 10, 11 days into the process where my taste buds just changed. And since then, again, I often, people say, "Oh, do you not eat chocolate anymore?" So I fell out of love with chocolate, but I still like it. And, I have it in the house, but it's, like you say, it can sit on the side and not get eaten, or it can, if it's a bar of chocolate, I might open it, have a few squares, and that's enough. And sometimes I might eat the whole bar. It doesn't really matter. It's, but the relationship to it has completely changed. So I'm kind of at choice, or able to be in the truth of the moment. And the other piece of it, going back to the beginning of the energy behind it, sometimes it's about just the pure pleasure of it. Like I'm really genuinely enjoying eating whatever this is, or imbibing whatever this is. And so I'm going to go with that, because again, bringing in the abundance aspect. I've talked all about the abundance thing for me, which was pleasure before money, but pleasure before most things, or different flavors of that these days. But it's like what brings me pleasure. And again, there's subtle distinctions in there, like there is between a craving and a genuine desire in openness. Longing, like there's a real whole body yes that's in alignment, versus a craving. So there's again lots of subtle discernments which as you practice it, they become automatic. So in that same way, for me with pleasure, it's like there's a difference between hedonistic or even self-harming pleasure. Do you know what I mean? You can even go to that point with it, where it's like, well, no, I'm just trying to bury something, calling it pleasure. But again, as you give yourself permission to explore it, you begin to learn your own truths, and that's true of anything. I say, whether it's transformation, whether it's eating, whether it's whatever it is, that seems to be the journey of give yourself permission, open up, discover what's out of balance, start to learn the discernment, start to honor the discernment, continue to give yourself a break when you hit an edge, because at the edge you're going to come into new territory, and therefore the old patterns are going to assert themselves, but you're much better at understanding that, so you tend to transform them quicker. And then you meet a deeper edge, and on it goes in the path of the growth-seeking being. But you begin. I think what happens is, as the background shifts, you begin to really understand that path.
So I hope you got a lot from that one. There was lots in there, wasn't there? Make sure you go to the show notes, www.babrillianthuman.com/57 for this episode. And I'll have written out some notes so you can see them written down if you're that kind of person. And again, I'm going to encourage you to go and download the NPA process sheet if you haven't already. Again, you can do that via the show notes, or you can go directly to joelyoungmpa.com. Even an MPA, by the way, if you're not sure, is November Papa Alpha, to get there and go and download it. Now, in the question that I had originally, to get in the lady, Kirsty, who got in contact with me about this issue to begin with, really one of the things that she was asking me was how do I sort of use MPA with food? Well, when it comes, I've been talking about, you're the sponsoring energy, sort of the energy you eat with. That's an area where MPA can certainly help. And when you get the basic training, or certainly even more so the advanced training, if you choose to go down that path, which I would strongly encourage you to do if this is an area of concern for you, then you'll discover, you can use the programs. But I think what I want to give you today in terms of how to use MPA is that wherever you find any kind of conflict or push-pull, or you find yourself stuck in any kind of habit, that's where the basics of MPA can really open the doors and begin to shift and begin to invite into your consciousness the best next step for you. It's one of the great things it will do. And the MPA process will do great things specifically if you're working on a specific issue. But I think if I was to generalize it, I'd say it opens the doors to the next natural step. And that is a wonderful thing. If you have listened to any of these episodes over any length of time, you know I'm a massive advocate of starting where you are and then moving in step by sustainable step through the process. We often want to take a leap that stretches us to snapping point, and that's when we go back to square one. And, so using NPA, it's like a stepping stone in that situation, because each next natural little sustainable step tends to sort of just show up to you. It's like it sort of pops into your mind and you go, oh, I think I'll just do this. And it's not even, as I said, at the beginning with my, what I call the buff body program, where I shifted my state around food and exercise in a very sustainable way. And I say sustainable because it's still active and alive in me. What now? I don't know, 9 years later. I'm nowhere near the weight that I was. I do have my natural body's, ups and downs. But the margin of shift in there is so much smaller than ever it was. And I'm just a completely different person in relation to food and exercise. But these things, but NPA is a great way to have that stepping stone to open into your mind of what the next natural step would be. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a thinking process. I think that's what I was trying to say there. It's not a thinking process. It's one of those things where it's just automatic. It just flows. The next thing flows. And where you've got a stuckness, a habit, some kind of block, or mental block perhaps, around the whole area of food and diets. And again, I said at the beginning, it's not necessarily just food. This could be with any kind of habit, like the cravings thing I talked about last week. Then having that sort of automatic next natural step is a really powerful thing. So for me, when I did what I call the buff body program, when I shifted it, what happened was that beginning to exercise was natural. I didn't do it from a place of, that would be the right thing to do. The nature of shifting my relationship, say, to chocolate, I just kind of fell out of love with chocolate. It was automatic. I didn't have to try. I didn't have to work at it. I fell in love with salad, and that was just like, bit of a surprise to me. I think this salad's really tasty now. That wasn't like that before. I was just eating it because I had to, right? So it's an interesting thing. So I think go back to the fundamentals, and you can learn the fundamentals. Yes, you'll get the basics of it in terms of the mechanics of doing NPA when you download the sheet. The basic training program will give you the fundamental understanding and the encouragement to use it, and from using it you'll get the hang of it. You'll start to see the benefits, and those benefits will be positive reinforcement, so you keep using it, and that will give you what you need to do this step-by-step thing. And then if you feel moved to continue when the advanced training comes out, then that will teach you not the buff body program, but the programs that work for you specifically, and go into more depth in how the process works, and we'll even be covering how to use NPA in all sorts of different situations. So again, look out for that if that's something you feel moved that you would like to do. All right, I think that's it. It's a wrap for today. One last thing is that Kirsty also mentioned about the area of sort of body dysmorphia, which is kind of a side, often related, but side issue when it comes to weight and body size and those kind of things. That is something that I do want to cover in a later episode. So keep your eyes peeled for that. And again, if you're listening to this at some time where in the future, chances are I've already done it. So have a search on the website or in your favorite podcast platform. If you've enjoyed this, share it with somebody. You just go and tell them there's this amazing podcast called Be a Brilliant Human with Joel Young. Search it in your podcast platform. Send them to the beabrillianthuman.com website. And I would be very appreciative of that. If you have a question for me, if you have something you'd like me to cover, you can get in touch too. You can do that directly via the website. You'll see there's a button there that says leave me a message, and you can leave me a voice message. You can get in touch via social media platforms. Kirsty got in touch via Instagram private message. So she follows me on Instagram. I'm at Joel Young MPA there, at Joel Young MPA on Twitter. And if you search on Facebook, or you can look for NPA Rocks, and that's our Facebook page there. Again, you can leave me a message that way, send me a PM, or you can, of course, do old-fashioned email, joel@nonpersonalawareness.com. Just get in touch, say hi, let me know, are you enjoying the program? Are you enjoying the show? And if there's something you'd like to ask or would like me to cover, then you let me know and I'll see what I can do. Sound good? Fantastic. Hope you've enjoyed today. Let me know and I will see you next week. All that remains is to cue the moo.